So I wasn't really brought up in like a Christian upbringing, Christian family. Didn't really have any sort of Christian sort of understanding. Didn't really understand what God was growing up. Um, I think probably where my faith came from is probably from what I do. Um, didn't really understand God, but I kind of felt like I was meant to work in care, and I kind of felt like that was my calling, like that was my purpose. So that's what I did, um, and I kind of just did that because it felt right up until like my mid 20s, and then I kind of lost my way a bit. Um, got a bit disillusioned, so I decided I was going to leave. And I decided I was going to go off, do something different, find something different to do, and it didn't work out. Um, left care work, nothing else really came up. Spent a couple of months, nothing really going right. Decided I was going to go back into care work just because it was an easy way of doing what I know, and even that didn't work because I was going in it for the wrong reasons. So spent about a year kind of struggling, and at the end of the year I kind of figured that the reason things weren't going right is because I had kind of turned away from what I was meant to be doing and turned away from my calling. So got to the point where I kind of got a bit desperate, didn't really see a way out of it, and stood there one night in my room and just started to pray for no reason whatsoever. And I remember praying that if there was a God, and if everything that was going wrong was because I turned away from my calling and turned away from what I was meant to be doing, if there was a God, I said in prayer, I'd do you a deal. And I remember saying, if you straighten things out, and if you get me back on my feet, and if you get things going right again, then if you want me to go back to care work, I'll go back to whatever you want me to do. So a couple of days go by, and the phone rings. And it was a nursing agency that I'd been trying to get work with. And they said, good news, paperwork's all sorted, we got work tonight, when can you start? So I went back to nursing, and I went back to ward work. So a couple of days go by, and phone rings again. And it's someone that I hadn't heard from in years. I played gigs with him years and years before. And he said, oh, I got a band. We got gigs lined up. We need a bassist. Can you play bass for us? And I kind of didn't even really have a social life at that point. Everything had ground to a halt. So I was like, okay, cool. So another couple of days go by. And sort of my first couple of paychecks start coming in because it was paid there and then as you were working it. So Christmas was coming up, so I decided to go Christmas shopping. So I went to a garden centre, and took a bit of liking to the girl that was serving me on the checkout, and ended up on a date. Turns out that was my future wife. So within the space of about 2 weeks of saying that prayer to a God that I didn't even believe in at the time, literally I'd gone from being out of work, having no social life, having nothing going right for me, to being in work, to being in band, to playing gigs, to having a social life, to being out on dates with my future wife. And it was just really bizarre. It was a really sort of strange coincidence. So went out on a date, and we're talking, and Alison starts telling me all about, like we were talking about, like, I don't know, festivals and stuff, and she starts telling me about this festival she went on when she was younger, this Christian festival, and I suddenly twig she's a Christian. So as time goes on, it ended up that I started going to Bethel with her. Mainly out of respect, because I didn't understand anything about Christianity, and I kind of knew that it was important to her, and I wanted to respect that, and I wanted to understand it. But also kind of because this really strange coincidence had happened, I kind of wanted to understand it for myself. So ended up going on an Alpha course, and I always felt like I wanted to do something to serve, that it had kind of all come out of serving, so I wanted to do more of that, but I didn't really know how. And people were saying, well, you're a musician playing the worship group, and I didn't feel like it was right. I didn't feel like I was Christian enough. So driving to church one morning, and I remember praying, I want to serve, but I don't know how. So God, show me how to serve. 10 minutes later, we get into church. I open up the newsletter. There's a full page spread advert looking for musicians to play in the worship group. So I thought, I don't really feel ready, but I'll put my name forward. And if I'm not right for it, if I'm not a Christian enough, then they can just say no. But they said yes. So I'm playing in the worship group, and I'm still kind of trying to figure out where my faith is at. And the kind of sticking point was I wasn't taking communion because I didn't feel like I was right for it. I felt like I needed to do it for the right reasons. So I was kind of holding off on that. And playing in the worship group one day, and I suddenly realised communion's coming round. And I'm in kind of this predicament because I kind of didn't really know if I was right for the worship group anyway. But if I wasn't prepared to take communion and call myself a Christian, then why would I be up front sort of leading things? But I also didn't want to just take communion for the sake of taking communion. So I'm kind of in this battle of what do I do? And as it's coming round and it gets the person next to me, I'm sat there and I'm like, the only way I can make it logical is, do I pray to God? Do I put my trust in God? Do I have faith in Jesus? And I suddenly realised that I'd actually been putting my trust in God right from the start. And I hadn't even realised it. So if I was putting my trust in God right from the start, why wasn't I taking communion? Why wasn't I calling myself a Christian? So I took communion. And that was the turning point. That's probably when I feel like I came to faith, because the following day, the stuff that would normally make me anxious, when I sort of worried about stuff, I thought back to taking communion, and it kind of reminded me that I was putting my faith and putting my trust in God and putting it in Jesus. I didn't feel like I needed to be afraid anymore. And I felt different. I felt like I had changed. And that was probably the point when I felt like I came to faith.